Hey everyone, today we're taking a look at the Colt Canada Integrated Upper Receiver, or IUR. All I want you guys to focus on for this video today is just the upper receiver portion of this firearm. Please ignore the lower receiver and accessories and all that kind of stuff. We're really just talking about the upper, and I was a little too lazy to take everything off of here because I've got it wire managed. You can see some zip ties and stuff like that on here, and really didn't want to take all that stuff off and redo it. So we're focusing just on the upper, and we're going to talk about a little bit of the history regarding the IUR platform. So this is the latest iteration of the IUR that's available. This is a 10.5-inch barrel length rail model. The rail itself is about a 9.25-inch rail. It's kind of hard to measure because as an integrated upper receiver, the rail is one piece with the upper receiver. There's no bolts or anything holding the rail onto the upper. They're all one piece of 70-75 aluminum. What makes an integrated upper great, and the reason for the ideology behind it, is basically, number one, you get a perfectly monolithic flat top rail across the top. Yes, there are some standalone rails on the market that give you that monolithic upper rail, but usually you've got some spacing issues right where the rail meets up with the receiver itself. The rail segments or the rail sections usually skip a beat and they're not continuous all the way along. With the IUR, you've got a continuous rail segment all the way along. What does that do? Well, if you're running anything like night optics or aiming lasers or any kind of aiming device, mounting something on the front of your rail isn't going to make it any less accurate or susceptible to wobble or loosening of the rail like with a standard bolt-on rail. Some quality rails out there like the Daniel Defense Risk 2 system and some of the other great ones on the market aren't really going to be that susceptible to having wobble or play on the rail itself just because they've got a fantastic lockup mechanism. That said, you can't beat having the entire thing being one piece of aluminum. It kind of protects your gas system and all that kind of stuff a little bit better. If you fall and you bash your rifle or something like that, having that whole upper receiver as one piece is great because it's either going to be fine or you're probably going to crack the whole thing in half, and if that happens, you've exerted so much force on the rifle anyway that it's, you're probably in a situation where there's worse things going on than the fact that your rifle is now broken. That's the main reason for that integrated upper receiver. That full monolithic rail and having that stability around having anything that you mount to the rail section as accurate as anything on your receiver, essentially. They do make this upper in different lengths. As I mentioned earlier, this is the 10.5-inch length. They make one for the 15.7-inch barrel as well. I don't know the exact length of the rail on that one. This isn't actually the latest generation of integrated upper receiver from Colt Canada. They do have what's called the MRR, or modular railed rifle, or modular railed receiver. I'm not actually sure which one of the two it is, but either way, they do have the MRR on the market now, and that's kind of like the next variant of the IUR. It is an integrated upper receiver, which basically means the rail is one piece with the receiver portion. I'll throw a picture up on the screen here or something like that so you guys can see what I'm talking about. But instead of having actual monolithic rails that are just always on here, the quad-sided ones where you've got some on the bottom, some on the top, and some on the sides that are just always there, they've replaced all the rail sections on the 3, 6, and 9 o'clock position with M-LOK. So it lightens up the platform even more. It gives you the ability to custom place however many accessories on there that you can fit, basically, as long as you buy some little Magpul M-LOK rail sections. So that's a really nice system. I personally prefer that system to this system, but if you're looking at this from kind of a collector standpoint or a impressionist standpoint or anything like that, the IUR is the IUR, and I understand that. The MRR is a totally different beast. I prefer it. Some other people may prefer it for that modularity and lightweight, but the IUR is a fantastic platform either way. So, I'm going to go over it a little bit more here and kind of talk about some of the features just from the back to the front of the receiver. Some things that a lot of people don't really notice on the IUR. You've got a little bit of a slant on your rail here. They kind of bevel it down to meet the charging handle. It helps you get a good grasp on the charging handle, and it also helps if you've got some sort of backup iron sight on here. It usually overhangs this section so you can flip it up a lot easier. Little things like that you'll find on the Colt Canada rifles that you don't really see on too many other things. Another thing that you'll find on the back side here, if we flip this guy over and take a look And yes, this firearm is clear. Obviously, you guys saw that the bolt was locked to the rear. There is nothing in the chamber, so we're good to go there. And obviously, there's no magazine. Right here, if I kind of pull this charging handle out of the way a little bit, hopefully you guys can see. I'll zoom in on the video as much as I possibly can, maybe include a close-up at some point. But right here, there's actually a little insert. And that insert into the rail is actually what your charging handle latches into. And the benefit of having this as a design is if that ever wears out from your charging handle, constantly closing on it and opening on it and clasping to it, you can just pull that out and put a new one in. You can see Colt Canada stakes them in there from the factory, so they're not going to come out easily, but they are removable. So that helps from an armorer standpoint. Moving up the receiver itself, actually I guess we'll go back to the ejector port side here, or the right-hand side. One of the things that you'll see is that the dust cover is actually not, you wouldn't normally be able to put a dust cover in like you would on a standard rifle here, because usually you have to take your rail off, or you have to at least take a screw out or something like that in order to make space for the pin that holds the dust cover in place. While what Colt Canada has done is on the very bottom here, again, hopefully you guys can see that, I'll get a close-up in here as well. Basically on the very bottom, there's a little notch on either side, and then they have two little roll pins. I believe they're standard roll pins. And those roll pins are actually what hold the rod that holds the dust cover in place in there. That's the only thing. You just push the dust cover up, put the pins underneath, and then it basically just blocks it kind of like this. So if this is your rod, it can't come down because you've got that roll pin sticking through and blocking it. So really, really simple design there. Works very well, obviously, with the integrated upper, and it's pretty beefy. You can see it right around this area. It's very beefy around just below the ejection deflector and the rail section here. So good stuff there. Moving forward from that, you've got one tiny section of modular rail. All right. Now that modular rail, obviously you're not going to put like a light or a laser or anything like that back there, but there are a whole bunch of different types of accessories that you could put on there. I've seen some custom-made brass catchers that you could clip onto here and then have them catch on that side. What I'm using mine for, and what I believe most people are probably going to use it for, is basically right here. I've got a sling mount, right? That's just a Magpul RSA, rail sling adapter, and then the M-Lock one is modular sling adapter. That's what I've got on there, and I like that because I usually run a 1-point sling off of my Magpul ASAP back here, the ASAP plate. Again, there's an ASAP QD if you prefer the QD setup. I like the hooks. It's just more universal. So I like to run a 1-point here, but if I ever do need to run a 2-point and sling this thing behind my back or something, I can detach, have a 2-to-1 type sling, detach and hook on up here, and then you're good to go. A lot of guys like to put their sling as far forward as possible, but for me, I like to have this area at the front kind of clear for my hand to do whatever I need to, depending on how I'm holding the rifle. Again, it's not that big of a deal for me on this particular rifle because you can probably see here, I've got the pressure pad for the PEC and the light right on the top, which makes the system kind of modular. I'll show you guys here a little bit. Again, I'm going to point this in a safe direction for all you safety Nazis out there. All right. So when I hold the rifle, I usually kind of index like this. I put my thumb right on the center ridge here. So even if I push down, I'm not going to have a negligent light discharge or laser discharge because that center rib doesn't connect to anything and it's reinforced rubber. So that way I got a good index point and I'm good to go there. Now, what I can do is if I actually switch hands over here, okay, same thing. I can get that exact same grip with my hand, indexing my hand in the same place. The back part of the tail switch here from the light kind of interferes a little bit, but it's not that bad. I can still do the exact same grip and get that same index on the gun. So it's not too bad from that regard. That's what that little section of rail on the IUR is for, as far as I can tell, basically sling attachment points and perhaps brass catchers and accessories like that. Maybe little unimportant accessories. You could put camera mounts on there. You could put whatever. Obviously, it's rail. You can put whatever you want on it. But as far as I'm aware, most people are probably going to use that as like a sling mount location. Moving forward to that, kind of unique thing on the IUR, especially these SAS ones. There's variants of the rifle out here that have continuous rail all the way along on the sides. But the most common ones you're going to see are going to be these with this little flattened section here. This lightens the weight of the rail, and it gives you a really nice area to just put your hand basically. It's a little slimmer, a little easier to hold on to, and you can see when I had my hands on there indexing the light position in the front of the grip that it just lines up perfectly pretty much for where you're going to want to put your hand. You do have rail, continuous rail along the bottom, all right, right in front of this little lug, which I'll talk about in a minute. It's kind of a specialized piece, so we'll get there in a second. Then you got some just standard rail on the front. There are a couple of holes somewhere along here. There's one here, and then there's one on the other side in the same position. That actually holds the heat shield in place on the rifle. There is a heat shield in the bottom. I don't know if you can really see it on this side, but if you look in here, obviously, unlike the top side, there's the top versus the bottom is blocked off by that heat shield. That's just so when your hand is down there, it's going to block some of that heat and redirect it up through the top vents so that it's not that big of an issue if you're shooting continuous full automatic or, you know, just lots and lots of sustained semi-automatic fire. Speaking of which, the barrel in here is a Colt Canada. It's a chrome line barrel basically. Very, very high-end barrels. Colt Canada barrels are regarded as some of the best barrels in the world, and it's a machine gun profile barrel, so it's a thick barrel all the way along from the back to the front. There's no lightning cuts or anything like that in it, and they did that because the Canadian Forces, ever since they've been using Colt Canada rifles, which is basically since they adopted the M16 platform and M4 platform style rifles, they've had fully automatic capability. Unlike in the US, where a lot of the different corps and divisions, Army, Navy, Marines, whatever, a lot of them have issued burst fire models over the year because they didn't want guys blowing up their barrels because they had thinner profile barrels. Colt Canada just opted to have a heavier weight barrel on all of the rifles, the rifle length, the carbines, these little SBR builds, everything has had full profile barrels just for better longevity and all that. So yeah, like I said, they're chrome lined and they're cold hammer forged barrels as well. So really, really good stuff. Very accurate. I forget the terminology for it, but on these real guns, they actually slightly, very, very, very slightly reduce the taper of the barrel right near the muzzle, and that actually helps with accuracy to some degree. They do a lot of really nice stuff on these rifles, and they're workhorses. That's essentially the IUR. The only thing I didn't really cover is this guy right here. This is a grenade launcher lug. So if you mount a rail-mounted grenade launcher to the bottom of this, this actually interfaces with the rear of that grenade launcher, so the rail isn't taking all of that recoil force. This lug does instead. Additionally, on the very bottom, there's actually a screw in the lug, and that screw tightens up against the barrel nut. So the barrel nut, theoretically, shouldn't ever be able to back out on itself and become loose. Speaking of the barrel nut, because this is an integrated upper receiver, you're kind of screwed when it comes to exchanging the barrel, unless you're Colt Canada, because since this rail doesn't come off, there's no way to get to that barrel nut unless you have the proprietary tool that Colt Canada has, which is essentially just a hollow cylinder that they slide after you take your muzzle device and your flash hider and all that stuff off and your gas tube out. You slide that over the barrel, and it's got the teeth required to interface with the barrel nut. And once it's in there, it hooks into the barrel nut, and it just slides over the barrel, and then you just twist the whole thing off from this end over here, basically. Now, I don't know exactly. I've never seen one of their tools specifically. But, luckily, because we're going to be talking about something similar in a moment, I have an example of something that it probably looks like right here. So, this is probably very similar to what a Colt Canada tool looks like. You've got your little pieces on the end here that actually connect into the barrel nut, and then on this side here, you've basically just got some, flat sections so that you can grab like a crow's head wrench or whatever and grab this and then apply your torque. I know at a shop that I used to work at, we made our own where we actually welded in an insert here that had just a ratchet connector right in the center, and that allowed us to put like an actual torque wrench on there and get a perfect torque down on that barrel nut because it's centered. You could get a crow's head adapter with one of those little torque wrench or ratchet wrench connections in it, and I mean it'd be offset a little, so it's not going to be perfect, but at least that way you'll be able to use a torque wrench and get somewhat near close to what you should be. This one also has like a little hole here, so you could put something through there and use it as a torsion wrench and kind of go from there. To give you an idea of what the barrel nut looks like, it's actually an inverse barrel nut. So this is the barrel nut right here, or at least very similar. Okay, and you can see you've got all your little teeth, and the tool here just kind of comes in and it integrates flawlessly with that, just like so. Okay, and then once it's locked in place there, you're pretty much good to go, and you've got a lot of ability to turn this. But you can see that the threads are on the outside because it actually screws in, and then the female threads are actually on the outside edge of the receiver there. So it's kind of a unique style of barrel nut. Voila! This is the HAO IUR airsoft kit for the Systema PTW platform. This is a fantastic piece of kit. There have been some IUR attempts previously in the airsoft industry. I say attempts because in my mind they've all been failures. No offense to the guys out there that have put all the work into creating their little rails that look like an IUR front end rail, but it's not an integrated upper receiver, so the entire point of really doing it was pointless. HAO, on the other hand, has all of the tooling and knowledge and staff and engineering expertise required to actually make a true-to-life copy of the Colt Canada IUR, and he's done this specifically for all you UKSF impressionists out there, because he knows that finding something like this is almost impossible, and bringing his expertise to the table and his team's expertise to the table to make something this fantastic for the airsoft industry is absolutely amazing. I mean, this thing, I've sat here and compared it to my real one for hours, just kind of looking at all the different little parts of it, and it is spot for spot identical. I mean, this thing is amazing. Everything is where it should be. Everything looks exactly like it should. I mean, you've got your Colt Canada 2C085 right up on here. You've got your US patent number down on the bottom, which is the essentially the reference to, I think LMT has the patent technically for integrated upper receivers. So they have to put that on there. He's got that on here. That's a little different. It's a little more subdued than on the real rifle. The real rifle, as you guys saw, has it in big white lettering. But other than that, I mean, it's in the same place. It's stamped in there, a little bit lower profile, which, from what I've been told, was intentional, because some of the early L119A2s that were shipped didn't have anything on here. They were just blacked out. Some of the newer ones had it, so he wasn't really sure which one to do, so he just kind of put it there but didn't put all the white markings in place. So, I mean, if you wanted, you could probably fill that in with a paint pen or something like that, and then kind of, you know, rub the exterior off and have it, or just leave it how it is and it'll look essentially like it's almost not even there. So, from the rear to the front again, we'll talk about everything. We've got that little sloped section to the rear section by the charging handle to aid in flipping it up, flipping it down, etc. You've got that in there. Awesome. You've got your staked in, removable catch for the actual latch. Awesome. Everything is there just like it should be. Moving forward from that, you got your little single rail sections here. You've got your grenade launcher lug on the bottom with the screw hole, and this does screw all the way up and interface with the barrel nut like it should. Then you've got your full rail along the bottom, 2 holes to get the screws in, the little set screws for the gas block. Got your holes on the side here for your heat shield, which is included. Look at this. You get a heat shield for your airsoft gun. Why? Because attention to detail. That's why. This thing is 100% accurate. It's beautiful. You got this all up here, right? You've got the hole on either side, right? You've got the smaller hole, and the reason this hole exists, if anyone's wondering why this hole exists, and why, again, it exists on the other side, is for an older style gas block, okay? If you think about how this sits in here, I'm gonna kind of line it up. So you got your 2 holes on the bottom. It's gonna sit in there something like that, okay? If you look at where this hole is That essentially lines up with the bottom portion of the gas block, and some of the old gas blocks had like a groove in the barrel that you would shove a stake or a pin through, right? And that's why that's there, because you would have to be able to punch it out before you'd be able to get the barrel block off or put the barrel block on and then punch it in. So that's why that hole is there. They don't use that style of gas block anymore. They use this one that just uses the set screws and these little indexing tabs, which we'll talk about in a second. But again, attention to detail. It's there on the real gun, and that's why it's here on this one. So amazing. Amazing piece of kit. Dust cover goes in the same way. You've just got your little slots that it hooks up into, and yeah, it's awesome. One thing that's different from the real gun. Back here on your little lug to put your pin through, there's a little U-shaped bracket thing on here that aids in putting pressure on the lower receiver to kind of remove any barrel wiggle. This is an idea that HAO borrowed from his H&Ks, because H&K rifles like the 416A5s and stuff like that, they do this. So that when you put the pin through, it puts pressure on those little two tabs, and it kind of stops the upper from wiggling on the lower. The real Colt Canada rifles use a different system. They use what's called elastomer or whatever. It's basically an AccuWedge. It's a piece of rubber that jams itself up under the bottom of this piece in the lower, and then when this closes, you have to really squeeze them together, the upper and the lower, and then get your pin through, and that removes any of your play. So similar concept. We're basically just using brute force to, you know, keep the play out of there. Does it do anything? Debatable. Theoretically, it should be a little bit more accurate, but is it a big difference? No. Does it matter for airsoft? Hell no. Is it cool that there's something like that in there? Absolutely. You're not going to have as much play. Your gun's not going to feel chintzy and cheap. Is it necessary? I don't think so, because I've got a HAO Colt receiver set that I built a Mark 18 on, and those things go together like no one's business. Better than some of the premium real AR receivers that I've built on. That HAO receiver set goes together and there's no play at all. It's perfectly machined. I'm assuming this is going to be the same way, and I'm going to be using that lower receiver with this. And you guys are going to come along for the ride and check it all out with me. So let's go through the rest of the parts. Obviously, this is the integrated upper itself. Okay, you've got your upper receiver and the rail, and it's just empty right now. There's nothing on it at all, and the parts that you get with it are going to be as follows. I showed you this earlier. You get your tool from HAO, made custom by him to interface with your barrel nut to get the barrel together. You got your barrel nut right here, which I showed you guys previously in the video. You've got your heat shield that I mentioned earlier that's going to go into the lower, and then you're basically set. You've got your barrel with the actual correct Colt Canada trademarks and everything and numbers on here. So you've got your Juliet 9730 right on the kind of the barrel extension, and then you've got your MP5 MP5.56, so magnetically something, whatever. It's some check that they do to make sure that there's, on the real barrels, that there's no imperfections in the metal. 5.56 millimeter. Then you've got your CC stamping for Colt Canada, okay, and then you've got your Juliet 10122 marking on there as well. So everything on this is just like it is on the real barrels. What else is there to mention on the barrel here that I wanted to? Right, so your gas block, okay? It just screws in. I don't know if you guys will be able to see this. I'll try and close up it as well in the video, but there's a couple of small little flat sections that the two little set screws essentially connect into. So you've got your little set screws here, very, very small, and those are basically just going to press up against these little indexing points here. Now, to make sure that it indexes correctly every time, what Colt Canada did is, if we put this the right way up, they've got these little indexing tabs, and there's little slots on the side of the barrel. So when this actually slides in, those line up in the slots, and now you've got like 0.5 millimeter of play, and then when you put those set screws in, that all tightens up and you're done. It's on there. It's permanently right up against the crown, or the shoulder here of the barrel, sorry. and you're set. You're good to go. No fiddling around with is it at 12 o'clock, blah blah blah. Nope, you put it on, it's at 12 o'clock because it's machined into the frickin' barrel. There's nothing else about it. So again, super rigid on the real gun. Obviously this stuff's a little more important, but seeing this true to life in an airsoft replica is outstanding. It's amazing. So we've got that there. Put the barrel back down here for a second, and there is also a little Allen head screw here, and that just kind of screws into the front of the gas block, right on its nose. Come on. Decided to do this in the most awkward way possible, just for your amusement. But yeah, so that'll just screw in like that, and then that's basically prepped. You want to tighten that down a little bit, but that's basically prepped to go into the rifle. Now, as I mentioned before, you do have the little screw here that's going to go into the lug on the bottom here, the grenade launcher lug. I'm just going to put it in a little ways for now. What you're going to want to do is basically get the barrel nut installed first and then tighten this up, because this is going to interface directly with this. I'm not going to be able to show that because once the barrel nut is in, it covers up the hole for this, but I will get a camera angle of the screw here sticking up into the receiver so that you can see how that works. So it's a functional component, and again, just another thing to make sure that this thing is 100% accurate. All right. Now we've got our, basic little plunger here. It's going to go in just like that, basically into the rear for your forward assist, plus the spring and the little roll pin for that. We've got the dust cover. The dust cover comes with one of these little E-clip, C-clip things on here. I don't know if you guys can really see on the end right there. Again, I'll highlight it so that you guys know. You don't need that on the real Colt Canada guns. They don't have it because it's not going to go anywhere. It's permanently in there. So take that off and throw it in the garbage. You don't need it. It's nice of how to include it, I guess. Maybe don't throw it in the garbage if you build these things a lot. Meaning airsoft AR-15s, keep it around for another build. But yeah, it's really not necessary. Then we've got something a little bit interesting. So how, a little while ago, some of you are probably like, what the hell is that? This is your gas block, or gas tube. It is straight. There is no, I'm rotating it, it's kind of hard to tell, I'm sure, on video, because it's all one color. But it is, in fact, straight. There's no bend to it. And that's because Colt Canada uses straight gas tubes in their rifles. Their gas block is a little bit higher up so that you don't need that little increase in the little shelf to jump up to make it into the receiver. And the reason they use a straight one here is because, again, it helps when we're dealing with temperatures. That little bend in the gas tube is a weak spot. Okay, it's been bent, the metal has been weakened there. When it gets hot, if the gas tube is going to explode or break or anything like that, it breaks right along those bends almost all the time. So Colt Canada was like, to heck with that, we're not going to deal with that noise, so they made a straight gas tube. This one is longer than normal. Obviously, normally your gas tube is just going to go from about here and end about here, okay? This one's longer. The reason for that is because HAO has recently started making PTW charging handles that actually have a replica ability to snap to the rear and come forward again. And that's why this little spring is on here. Essentially the way it works is you just take these two little nuts off of here. I have no idea how I'm going to get this thing installed. I'm going to need some really tiny little wrenches, which luckily I have, but that comes off. You take out the spring. You would slide this on after it's in the receiver. You're going to then put the spring back onto it. And keep in mind, the way I'm doing it now is a lot easier because normally it's going to all be like this. So you're going to put that on, and then you're basically going to drop your nuts all over the place because they're tiny. I'm just going to put one on for now. But basically what happens, you can probably figure this out already, when this is up on here and it's riding on this spring and it's got that nut, when you pull this to the rear, it compresses, and then when you let it go forward, it springs itself forward, obviously. It's a little more impressive when it's in the gun. But yeah, you can see that's spring-loaded now, so that's kind of neat. The downside is you can no longer use the charging handle to pull your cylinder out. So if you've got a HAO cylinder or a HAO upper receiver, and it's super tight, yeah, good luck with that. However, it's doable still. I might use a real charging handle because I'm going to replicate my real IUR build. So I'm not going to make an L119A2. I'm actually going to replicate my real build because it's sick and it's customized exactly the way I want it, including the lower. So I'm going to rebuild my lower with all the same parts as well. So yeah, I'm probably never going to use this charging handle except for the build here today, because I hate this. It's so long when you've got the rifle slung. I'm wearing a black shirt, not great, but okay. Basically, if you've got gear or anything, this catches on everything, and it unlatches itself, and it'll pop out, and then you're dealing with, you know, a charging handle that's just like sitting out halfway like this, and then you realize, and it sucks. So another thing, normally you've got those little lugs, those little tabs here that the charging handle has to latch into the groove or the little charging handle area in the upper receiver. These recoil ones don't have that. Not really sure why, but they don't. The receiver, though, does. Again, you probably can't see it here, but I'll get a close-up of it. It does have those little lugs, and you can put a real charging handle in there, and it'll work just fine, and it'll latch in properly. So there you go. That is everything that comes with the HAO L119A2 kit. Hopefully I've explained everything really well. I didn't go over the muzzle device or the crush washer, but it's a muzzle device. You're probably going to switch it out for something different anyway. This is just a standard A2 birdcage style, but yeah. This is everything, and now we're going to jump over to how to actually build an L119A2 or Colt Canada IUR upper receiver. Alright guys, so we're going to do some prep work to get this L119A2 kit from HAO put together. There's a few things that need to be done before we really move into actually like ratcheting stuff together. So I'm going to go over that now. Pretty much everything we're going to need to do is going to be done with just some Allen keys. I'm not 100% sure on what spec he used, so I have an SAE and a metric set here. So hopefully it's metric because metric is the best, and I'm pretty sure most of the Colt Canada stuff is actually metric. It might be Imperial, might be SAE. It feels like it's mostly going to be metric though, which is solid. I'm pretty sure they actually do like a mixture of different stuff. I think they've got some SAE components like threading and stuff, and then some metric stuff. But don't quote me on that. I'm not like an armorer or a gunsmith, but I have messed around with these things before. Honestly, just figure out which tools are the correct ones for you and go from there. So first thing, we'll do a couple easy things. You've got your small Allen head screw here, basically, okay? Just to give you guys an idea of what that looks like. There you go. All right. What that's going to do is that's going to meet up with your gas block right at the front side here. So essentially all you're going to do is take your little screw head here and thread it right in. Just that little gap. If I can get it to focus on it while we're doing it, that would be solid. All right, so that's going to just screw in together here all the way down. And once that's done, we're going to grab an Allen key here. This should probably be a 4 as well. Might be a little bit smaller. Yeah, that's a 4. So once that's in, you can go ahead and tighten that down. That doesn't need to be done before or after anything specific. It doesn't interfere with like the gas tube or anything like that. This is literally just kind of there for, well, show really on this gun. So once that's in and nice and tight, you're good to go there. If you want, you can Loctite this stuff. Just some blue Loctite would probably be fine. I'm not going to Loctite anything. I haven't in the past, and it's always been fine, so we should be good to go there. Next up, we're going to grab our longer Allen head bolt here. You can see that's going to be this guy. If she'll go ahead and focus. Come on. There we go. So it's going to be that longer Allen head bolt. And that one's going to go into the very bottom of our grenade launcher lug right here. So I'll go ahead and get that guy installed. Really doesn't like to focus very good. All right. So this one you don't need to put in all the way. For now, we're just going to put it in until there's maybe about an inch sticking out of the receiver like that. You just got to make sure that essentially internally it's not going to impact or come up into the area and interfere with when we put our barrel nut together. So now that that guy's done, we'll just kind of set that one back down there. Get ready and put our dust cover in. So we're going to just go ahead and slide the rod out here, put the spring to the side, set that guy down. And like I said earlier, the little clip that's on there basically, you can take that off. You don't need it at all. So we'll go ahead and remove that clip right now. Easiest way to do it is with some pliers. You can usually do it by hand, but it's going to be a pain in the butt and you might lose it. There we go. Got it off. And you can take your pin, and it doesn't matter really the direction, because your pin here, just basically you take it, you line it up with the two holes. So you've got hole 1 and hole 2, and then obviously on this side you can actually see there's punch hole here, and those holes actually go all the way through into the hollow of the receiver. Let's see if I can kind of illustrate that to you guys here using my handy dandy flashlight. Turn that on so we've got some light going through the receiver. And if I angle this correctly, you can kind of see there's light shining through those holes there because they go all the way through. So when you're putting it in, you've got to basically be sure that you don't punch those pins through all the way. So that's going to essentially just kind of sit in place like this. Put your pins through and you're good to go. What you're going to need for this though is you're going to need some of the tiny little pins, the little roll pins that HAO includes in his kit here. You can see them, I've got them aside in this little bag. You're going to have several different ones, okay? You're going to have 4 in this bag, or however he ends up packaging them. 3 of them are the same length as far as I can tell. These guys right here, okay? And 1 of them is all by itself and it's very, very short, all right? The 3 that are the same, 2 of them go for your dust cover and your pin. Let's put them over here by the pin, okay? The shortest one here is gonna be for the gas tube. That one's gonna basically go and fit right through here, and once it's in place, it'll stick out just a little bit wider. This other long one actually goes into this hole here. And what it does is it actually puts pressure on the gas tube. So when it's in place, it literally just sits below it, if I can show you, kind of like this. And it just puts pressure on the gas tube. Again, another feature of the Colt Canada rifles, just to help with longevity and all that kind of good stuff. We'll go ahead and we'll get our ejection cover in place here. I'm knocking all my stuff over, hitting my table. And once that's set up, we'll be right back, because setting the spring up is a pain in the butt. So we'll do that really quick and then we'll come back at you. I always overspring my spring. I don't just leave it in the basic position, and this gives it a really snappy lock position. And then now we've got it in place, and you can see that it's going to want to drop down and open on its own, okay? It looks like the dust cover that's included. The gray, I'm not a huge fan of it. On the real one, it's a much closer color to the receiver. Here's the real receiver. And you can kind of see them side by side. This one's much more gray in comparison. So the real ones are definitely more of a black color that matches the anodized coloring, but hey, whatever. I'm fine with this one. So now the next step is going to be to drive these little pins into place. So we're going to set them in here, and you are going to need a bit of a mallet or something like that to drive these in place. And you're actually going to need, ideally, a punch. To get them started, you can just use your mallet. If you've got a mallet with like a soft head on it, or some sort of a plastic head or a synthetic head, you should be able to just take that and bang it all the way down into place. I would actually recommend that over using a punch, unless you have a perfectly sized roll punch pin for this size of pin. I'm gonna grab that. I'm gonna not do it here because the table surface I'm on right now, well, one, it's really nice and it looks good. And two, everything here is laid out nicely and I don't wanna like bang the table and have all this stuff fly everywhere. So I'll be right back. I'm gonna put both of these in. I'm gonna show you what's gonna happen, but I'll tell you, all I'm gonna do is literally hammer this pin in place so that it sticks in. Be careful and make sure that you get it lined up not only with the outside hole here, but the inside hole as well. Theoretically, if you're hammering on this too hard, this outer portion, you could bend it or snap it on both sides. But it is very rigid and durable. Obviously, they're pretty thick parts there, so it shouldn't be an issue. But I'll be right back once those are in place. Ta-da! All right, so it's in place now. It's not locking up. I'm assuming just because this is a cheap dust cover and the little pin on it is not technically to spec. Let's see here. Yeah, so it's just how it's seated in place, essentially. The whole assembly here is a little bit too low, so it's always going to want to flip open. I don't know if this is a Systema part or if this is a real component. I'm assuming it's probably a Systema part or maybe just like a cheap one that HAO was able to find in Taiwan there, not 100%. But yeah, it doesn't lock in place. But again, on an airsoft gun, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't do anything. It's all sealed up in there anyway by the cylinder. So this is what I used to get it in. You can see that's not a hole. It looks like a hole in the camera, but it's actually it's just a mallet. Just a rubberized end mallet. I use these to get that in, and then I use a slightly, unfortunately, oversized punch to get them the rest of the way in. So I don't know if you'll be able to tell really, but there are a couple of little nicks around the outside edges there, but whatever. No one cares. It's a gun. Who cares about the finish? It's never going to be perfect if you actually use the damn thing anyway. So those are in. We're good to go. All right. What's next? Obviously, we need a forward assist for our airsoft gun that doesn't need a forward assist, but we need it. It's important. You've got one pin that comes with that one. That's a very large pin. This was the other sized large pin that came in the bag, and then this is the extra large. We'll call that the extra large pin. That one is what we're going to use for this guy. This is pretty simple, basically. You take your piece, you set it in there, I believe that direction. Yeah, okay. So essentially, if you're looking at it this way, you're going to take the hollowed out portion and put it gun side in, not gun side out. Let's see if I can line this up actually properly. So, come on. All right, wrong, right. All right, so it's going to go in like that. That's going to line up with the hole, but in order to do it properly, you need to use the spring that it comes with, okay? So the spring goes in as well. You set it all up. You put your pin in place after you're done, and then you're basically good to go. And you can approach it from either end. I'm actually gonna put the pin in from the bottom, and that's just my personal preference, because if you make any nicks, it's gonna be on the bottom side as opposed to the top side. So that's just something that I picked up over the years of building real AR-15s. Okay, I can't do this on the camera. Well, maybe I can do this on the camera. Let's see. And we're back. It's in. So you can see here, hopefully. Again, same thing, a little bit of marking around the outsides, but that's mostly actually on the pin itself, though, just the finish of the pin coming off. And if you look at the top side, it's perfect. So that's why I like to go in from the back side. And now we have a functioning fake forward assist. Yay! Fun. All right, so now that that stuff's all together, there's actually not that much more to put together an IUR. We've got, obviously some of the more important stuff is going to be done with the wrench here, and that I'm going to have to do on the vise. For the most part, it's pretty self-explanatory and pretty simple. You take your barrel with your barrel nut, you slide it onto your tool, like that. You take your receiver, tilt it at an upward angle, and slide everything into place. You can double check by looking from the inside. Maybe. I don't know if you guys will be able to see on camera. But look on the inside to make sure your alignment is good on your barrel. I always back thread this to make sure that it gets nice and lined up properly. It's lined up still. So just hand tighten it all the way until you can't hand tighten it anymore. And at that point, okay, so we're here at the vise. I have a big ass adjustable crow's foot wrench. I'm gonna go ahead, pre-size that approximately to the HAO tool. Vice blocks on the IUR, unless you have a custom made one, they're not gonna fit perfectly. They don't have to. I'm not gonna torque this to anything specific. I'm just gonna line this guy up. Now that this is on here, slid in, rotate it until you feel it lock on that barrel nut, wiggle it around. Come on. I got it like literally the first time it was locked, and then I just messed around with it to show you guys. Okay, there we go. So we're good. Now you can go ahead and tighten this guy up. About as tight as you feel comfortable going for a PTW is good to go. So now we can loosen this guy off of here. You can see this thing is like, my vice block was on there, and it was providing some anti-torsion and stuff like that, better than just clamping it into a vise off of here or whatever. But yeah, that's in there, nice and solid now. Now we can go ahead and actually do up this thing all the way. Okay, we're back. There's less stuff on the table now, which is great. I'm gonna grab Allen key here, and we're gonna start to tighten down this bottom lug nut. Just hand tight is fine. Well, hand tight using an Allen key. You don't have to give this thing a ton of torque. All right. So that guy's done. That guy's in there. Your barrel nut, etc., is all now fully secured. You're good to go on that side of it. Now we can put our heat shield in. Just basically slide it in place, pinch it a little bit so that it'll start to slide in there. And this is, now I remember why this method didn't work great, because you've got your barrel in the way, so you can only get it so far down using pliers this way. And once it gets to a certain point, use something to just kind of force it back like that, which sucks. But you can usually also, I don't know if you saw that, but basically I just pushed it along this way. The other thing you can do is actually find it in there with your tool and push on it that way. And you can see that sliding here, and once it gets to here again, you can do it this way. To a point, and then you've got to actually get a slightly longer one and go at it from the front again. That might have actually clicked right there. Yeah, it looks like it did. All right, so the heat shield is in, the barrel is in. The next step is basically going to be the gas block. So the gas block, you just line up your gas tube, essentially. You got to send it through the hole in the receiver down there, so you got to kind of look and find that. And then you're just going to slide this in, and it will index off of those little slots that I showed you guys earlier. Again, we can push it in just to make sure that it's nice and seated with an Allen key. And then we're going to use the holes that are conveniently placed in the bottom here to get this screwed in. So I like to do this inversed, so you keep your screw facing up, because if you put it down, you're just going to lose it and it gets annoying. So basically what I do is I keep this upwards, I roll this over onto it, I find my threads, and I screw it in. And now we're already screwed in. So that one's good. Grab our next one here, do the same thing, roll it over. The threads are nice and big and easy to find, so there you go. You got both of these guys in there. Then you can go ahead and tighten them down nice and tight so your gas block doesn't go anywhere. we go. Nice. So those are in. Hopefully you can see them on camera there. Gas block is nice and straight. You can see right down that nice outer barrel. And we're almost done. The only next thing to do, we're going to grab that one longer pin and we're going to drop it through so that it kind of pins your gas block, put some tension on it. So that's going to go right into this hole here, like that. And I'm going to have to find a punch that's going to fit, because obviously that's not going to be long enough anymore, which kind of sucks, but oh well. So I'll be right back once that's pinned in place, and then we're good to go. And it's installed, it's in there. You probably can't see really because it's a small roll pin that's round and circular, and you can see right through it. But it is in there. I used a small little, I definitely didn't use one of these. That's not why this shifted in between clips. Nope, don't do that. Use a proper size punch, and don't use your Allen keys as punches. That's not what they're for. Don't do that. But, you know, in a pinch, they might work. Just saying. All right, so as you can probably tell, we're almost done. There's not a whole lot left to do. We'll get something obvious out of the way. We'll put our muzzle device on here. Maybe do it on camera for you. You want to sort of, kind of do your best to line up your crush washer. And then I'm going to take this back over to the vise to get it actually properly torqued down using an armorer's wrench. But I'm just kind of lining it up now so that it's nice and even around, basically. But we'll get that done in a minute. And then the last thing to do is going to be to install HAO's recoil thing here. I'm going to admit, I haven't done one of these before, so we'll see how this works out. I'll try and do this on camera so you guys can see. Angle it like that, I guess. This might be pretty hard to do on camera, but we're going to slide that in. Take our spring, get that on there like that. Just kick it all the way down. Let's see here. How's this gonna work? I want that all the way on so that I can get the maximum amount of spring. Oh, did I do it? Did I get one of them? I think I did. I mean, once one of them's on there, I can let the spring tension off. Oh, I totally did it. All right, so this is what I'm doing. I'm using the hook to pull the spring back and lift up into the, towards the camera on the spring. And that let me kind of finger bang one of these little nuts into position. And now I'm just kind of slowly spinning it right up to the crown. We got it there, and now I can let that spring tension off, and that'll hold it there. And I didn't even really scratch anything up really. And now, theoretically, this, I mean, it's not locked in the channel because there's no tabs, but it functions like a charging handle. That's neat. So, where did my other little nut go? I probably dropped it. It's probably gone. I don't know where it went. Here it is. It's right here. We're good. We're saved. I need 7. I'm going to see if I can actually screw them tight. I don't know if I'll be able to or not. But, yeah. Okay. So, note to self, the charging handle thing is neat. It's a pain in the butt to install, though. I don't know if you guys will be able to see me get this other one on. I'll try and do it on camera. No, you know what? It's not going to work. I'm sorry. Basically, all I'm going to do is I'm going to take the little nut, and I'm going to, if I can hold it, you know what? Here. I'm going to take the nut in this orientation. I'm going to drop it into the receiver, into the little gap that the charging handle has. And then I'm basically just going to kind of finger bang it around until it lines up. So kind of drop it in there so it's sort of lined up. Get it tied up against the other one there. Now, yeah, there's no way that you can get something in there to actually tighten it. I might be able to use pliers. Oh yeah, so you can use pliers to some degree. All right, both of the nuts are installed, and the charging handle functions like a charging handle. It doesn't seem to have enough spring tension to overcome the latch though, so you still got to kind of manually latch it forward. You can kind of see right there, it's not overcoming the latch. Let's put this mostly finished gun. No, you know what? I'm gonna finish it. I'm gonna go tighten this, and then I'll be right back, and we'll have a finished product. All right, so here's pretty much all the parts we used to put this thing together. My little hook, a couple sets of Allen keys, metric and SAE, some pliers, a hammer, basically. I used another hammer. I also used this little rubber tip mallet. I used a flashlight to check some stuff. I used a couple punches as well. That's pretty much everything you need. So I'm just gonna move all of the tools out of here now because we're basically done with those. All right. There is the L119A2 or Colt Canada SAS IUR Upper Receiver. And here is my old HAO. This is a Colt. It's, yeah, I know, it's, the finish is messed up. It's been used a bit. This is my old Colt Mark 18 essentially setup that I've been running for quite a while now. I'm missing my PEC because it's over here on my actual IUR right now. So yeah, I'm not baller enough to have multiple real PECs, so that's what's on here right now. But this is a HAO receiver set as well. It's pretty awesome. I really like it, to be fair. But we're going to basically be completely pulling this upper off, taking the cylinder out in the inner barrel, and we're going to throw it into that. We've got ourselves one PTW lower receiver, one PTW cylinder, one Systema inner barrel assembly with hop-up. Let's make this into a functioning PTW. So we're going to grab our inner barrel assembly and line that up with the outer barrel, slide it in, and you can see you don't have to take your charging handle out because it's shorter now for the recoil system that you don't need to. So now we're going to grab our cylinder, slide that in here. That's not nearly as tight as it is on my, I mean, that'll just come out. If you compare that to my HAO Mark 18, like right here, there's tightness. I gotta push, and this thing does not come out. Like, you gotta like pull it out. So we're gonna go ahead, slide our cylinder in, just like that. It looks like it's locking up nicely. Looks like we've got some good spacing at the back here. I don't think I'm gonna need any other spacers. Now let's connect up our upper and lower. I'm gonna try this with HAO's Colt lower receiver because that's what I actually have, is a Colt lower receiver on my real one. And then we're gonna close in that rear. Okay, this rear pin's gonna be a bitch because of that little U channel thing that he's got in there, but it goes in. You just gotta really give it some gas. And now, oh yeah, there's like almost no wobble there at all. Try and split the receiver halves there to kind of show you. There's a little bit, but oh, it's nothing. All right, there it is, guys. HAO's Colt Canada integrated upper receiver, the 10.5-inch variant that was issued to the UK Special Forces, SAS, and probably the SBS. I don't know. I'm not an operator. I just play one on TV. Look at that. That is beautiful, guys. I just want to like lick it and make sweet love to it. That is amazing. That looks fantastic. How real. That's awesome. That is absolutely stellar work. Fantastic stuff. I can't say enough good things about this thing. This is beautiful. And yes, it's clear. Amazing. Now I just got to get HAO's sweet cylinder with that bolt face so that it looks like that. Very cool. Very, very cool. Amazing job. In comparison with the real one. Beauty. Absolute beauty. I'm gonna have to get one of the Raptor charging handles for this guy. Again, I'm just not a huge fan of the Colt Canada snag everything charging handle. Amazing. Amazing! Alright guys, thanks for watching. This has been an epic road. Big thanks to HAO PTW Art, or HAO Incorporated, or HAO LLC, or whatever it is. Big thanks to HAO for making this and making this a reality. Lots of people out there are going to love it, I'm sure. I'm going to love it because I'm Canadian, man, and made in Canada. Super cool product, one of the best AR platforms out there in the world, and it's just going to be awesome. So thanks a bunch. I haven't even shouldered this thing yet because literally I built it on camera just for you guys. You've seen every step of the way, just like I have.